gathered here today. We are residents of Greenwich Village, of Chelsea, of Union Square, SOHO, NoHo, Lower Manhattan. We are NYU faculty, NYU students, residents of NYU housing. We are local business people. We're a very diverse group, but we're all here united in calling upon Borough President Stringer to vote no on the NYU expansion plan. The NYU expansion plan is going through the public approval process right now, and it's on Borough President Stringer's desk. His constituents over the last several months have sent him thousands and thousands of letters and emails, called his office, turned out at public hearings to say, we want you to vote no on this plan. We want the borough president to represent his constituents and to send this plan back to the drawing board. This would be a disaster for Greenwich Village, and it's not the right plan for New York City, and it's not the right plan for the university. And you're going to hear many people from the university today saying why they believe that this plan should be voted down by the borough president. There's been a huge amount of public interest in this, and we also want the borough president to hold a public hearing before he votes. He should hear from New Yorkers, from his constituents, from the NYU community about what they think about this plan and why it is so wrong and it should be turned down and sent back to the drawing board. My name is Berman. I'm the Executive Director of the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation. We got a great bunch of speakers today representing a broad spectrum of opponents to the NYU plan who are all united in calling on the borough president to vote no today. The first speaker I'm going to ask to come up is Patrick Deere, who's a member of the NYU faculty and who's speaking on behalf of NYU faculty against the Sexton plan.
Thanks everybody for coming today. As Berman mentioned, my name is Patrick Deere. I'm a professor in the English department at NYU.
Speak into the mic.
And I'm representing NYU faculty against the Sexton plan. We faculty are NYU, and we are Greenwich Village. We raise our children here, we teach our students here, we do our research here. We love our neighbourhood. We love this city, and we love and care about our university. We're here to tell you, we faculty, that the Sexton plan is even worse than you may think. Not only will it trash that neighbourhood and make us sick, and make our children sick, and damage the environment, we're here to tell you that this project will endanger the university, NYU itself. This plan, in its scale, could easily bankrupt NYU, and it will certainly damage our academic standing. Unless the City Council stops it, the Sexton plan will drive top faculty away, and no new faculty will want to come and live on a construction site for 20 years. The plan will turn our university into a third-rate institution. And we, the faculty, like the residents of the local community, like our students, will not let that happen. When we polled our members to see if we should work with Borough President Stringer for a compromise to try to make the plan not quite so bad, the vote was a unanimous, resounding, and uncompromising no. We stand here today with the community, the faculty of NYU, to tell Scott Stringer to do the right thing, please, the democratic thing, to do what any decent mayor of New York City would do, by standing up and voting no, without conditions, so that the City Council may decide to do the right thing too. Mr. Borough President, say no to this outrageous plan, so that NYU will have to come up with a better one on some other part of New York City. Vote no on this plan and tell NYU to start over. Thank you.
more important to do what is right? Are our leaders going to stand up, or is this just going to be another sorry lesson in history textbooks? Decades ago, our elected leaders put forth zoning rules to protect the neighborhoods. Now, there is talk of overturning those zoning rules. But just because it seems like an easy thing to do does not mean it's right. It's time for our leaders to do what is right, and not what seems tempting or easy. Because that's what we put them in office for, to do what is right, not what is easy. Working together, we will come together, build alternative solutions, and stop this plan. We will preserve and protect Greenwich Village for generations to come. Thank you.
Represent the very hard-working NYU graduate workers who are not very happy with their treatment by the NYU administration or with this plan. So I'm going to ask Scott Sommer from the UAW Region 9A to come forward, and he has Christina Thornton from GSOC with him as well.
All right. My name is Scott Sommer. I'm the New York Area Director for the United Auto Workers. We represent the adjunct faculty at New York University and also the graduate employees, of which Christy is one, and you'll be hearing from her in a second. I'm going to be brief because there's a lot of speakers and I don't want to repeat a lot of what they're saying, but you know, a lot is being said about, Borough President Stringer, who is a decent and good elected official, has always been responsive to the communities and will be tested in that track record and what he does here at NYU. There's a lot of talk about, he has to figure out how to thread the needle. There's no needle to thread here. Because when you're bringing bulldozers and sledgehammers on top of a community and workers and the fabric of this city, that is not a needle, and that cannot be threaded. There is only one thing that needs to be said here by Borough President Stringer, and that is no. Borough President Stringer needs to stand up for the communities from which he came. He is a lifelong New Yorker. NYU was made by New Yorkers. NYU is part of the fabric of our community. It is not something to become an institution to overtake our communities. This is a big city. There are parts of this city asking NYU, come develop in our part of town. We could use the economic development that you would bring to our community. They should go there. And in those places, our sisters and brothers in the construction trades would have jobs. They would have jobs wherever NYU builds. And as a proud member of the labor movement in New York City, I say to NYU, build somewhere you are welcome, build somewhere that makes sense, hire the union construction workers and treat them with respect, and they will build for you a beautiful university for our city. That is what they should do. Borough President Stringer, say no to this plan. I want to introduce to you one of our members, a member of the Graduate Student Organizing Committee. They're involved. As we all know, NYU is not an institution to be trusted. And the graduate workers at NYU have been battling NYU for about 10 years for union rights. So I want you to hear from one of our sisters, Christina Thornton.
I'm here today as both an NYU graduate student and a union worker at NYU, a member of GSOC UAW Local 2110. Our union, as Scott said, has been involved in the struggle with the university to recognize our labor and our right to organize since our last contract ended in 2005. I want to speak here today about NYU's history of relations with unions and to encourage our brothers and sisters in the Building Trades Council who hope that this project will bring them jobs to consider that history. Our union and brothers and sisters stood on these very steps and asserted that NYU had made promises that their members will benefit from this project, from the expansion plan, that good union construction jobs will come to their members. But NYU's current union workers know that the university's labor promises are worth little. Over the last decades, NYU has waged a campaign to casualize its workforce around the world while actively undermining its union workers. We're here today to say that the NYU expansion plan represents just another step in NYU's skewed priorities, away from research and teaching that make up the core of its mission. NYU is a university increasingly being run like a corporation, putting growth above all other concerns, including affordability, including the education of its students. That means a growing disregard for the working conditions of those who make the university run, the professors, the research and teaching assistants, the clerical workers, and a move towards more temporary, low-paying labor. When NYU refused to renew our contract in 2005, our members went out on strike and faced retribution from the university through tactics that would have been illegal if we were still covered under the Labor Relations Act. NYU fired 20 strikers and threatened the rest with denial of future work and future payment. More recently, NYU tried to force its clerical workers union, UCAT's Local 3882 of the ACT, to accept pay and benefit cuts despite a $114 million surplus of revenue over expenses. Revenue over expenses means profit, $114 million profit at a nonprofit institution. And they were asking for givebacks from their workers. They came to the table. They didn't say, we can't afford your benefits, we can't afford your salaries. They said, we don't want to pay them anymore. This is NYU's relationship with the union workforce. And NYU's heinous labor practices extend far beyond Greenwich Village. At its new Abu Dhabi campus, a 31-year-old Bangladeshi construction worker named Saiful Islam was recently killed. He died on the job, crushed by a falling beam because of improper supervision. This was after NYU supposedly responded to criticisms about the labor practices in Abu Dhabi, after Human Rights Watch and other international institutions came after them for those labor practices. But NYU continues to refuse to allow third-party oversight of that job site, as a new report released by Human Rights Watch just today makes clear. We have seen the deadly consequences of NYU's disregard for workers' rights. Now, this may be an extreme example, and it could be seen as an isolated incident if NYU did not have this ongoing pattern of hostility towards workers' rights. This expansion plan, like other huge deficit-funded development projects throughout New York City, is a bad idea. The university is characteristically opaque on the vital issues, such as how the project will be financed, what burdens it'll place on students in the future financially and otherwise, and what will happen if, like the rest of corporate America and real estate expansion in this city in recent years, it finds financing hard to come by after it has broken ground. The first casualty when those financial problems arise is the union workforce. I live in Brooklyn, and I've been a resident of Prospect Heights for 10 years. I have seen what the broken labor promises of these mega development projects look like through the struggle over the massive Atlantic Yards development in my neighborhood. Of the 17,000 union construction jobs promised in the Atlantic Yards development, so far only 600 have materialized. Our brothers and sisters in the construction unions have suffered these broken promises in Brooklyn, and NYU has offered no detail on financing that should lead us to believe that anything different will happen in this project. The union workers at NYU have all too clearly seen what NYU's priorities mean for our working conditions. So we're here today to ask Borough President Scott Stringer to stand up for workers' rights and to vote no on NYU's expansion plan. Thank you.
The NYU plan would reach far and wide, and that's why the opposition reaches far and wide as well. Our next speaker is Keerl, who's representing the SOHO Alliance, which is strongly opposed to the NYU plan. Bayat? Here you go. Come join us.
Hi, I'm Keerl. I represent SOHO Alliance. I moved to Manhattan in 1973. And at that time, neighborhoods were basically identified by the character of the people that lived there. The ratio in SOHO of resident to commercial locations is 10 to 1. The city in the past few years has primarily supported the influx of business rather than the residential quality of life. When you have this kind of influx of business and people, it basically changes the culture and the purpose of neighborhoods, which is something that just can't happen. what I mean by culture is that what's lacking is the sense that neighborhoods are represented by the people that live there. And I think that's extremely important, and that's what's really changed in this city. I hope that President Burrow Stringer then does the right thing and votes no against this proposal. Thank you.
Our next speaker represents some of the most heavily impacted people by the proposed NYU plan. The folks who live in Silver Towers, which was housing built by NYU for NYU faculty and their families, whose lives will be made miserable by this project, and who are part of the NYU community, but are very strongly opposed to this plan. Our next speaker is Peter Peter Ray, please join us.
Thank you. My name is Peter Ray, and I'm an associate professor at NYU at Tisch School of the Arts, and also a resident of Silver Towers. That's one of the brown buildings that's right, like, I'm not at 100, 110. I'm not right against it, but almost. And as a result of this construction, we'll be encircled by construction for 20-some years. As a member of the Silver Towers Tenants Association that has co-sponsored this and that supports emphatically urges Borough President Stringer to vote no on NYU 31. This plan is an assault on faculty and staff who live in these buildings, who want to raise their children in these buildings, who have to endure a 20-year nightmare of demolition and construction. And when it's over, this wonderful oasis will be turned into Midtown Manhattan. That's right. A faculty child who is born next year will spend his or her entire childhood surrounded by a seemingly endless construction zone. It'll be a nightmare of noise and pollution and dust, heavy machinery. After it's built, it will be like living in Midtown Manhattan. The message of NYU 31 is clear. John Sexton does not care about the community. He does not care about his own faculty. We are the lifeblood of the university, and the project is more important than nurturing those who make the university great. I am a tenured faculty member, and I'm using this privilege to speak out. Hundreds of junior faculty members and many even tenured faculty members are too scared to voice their outrage. I don't dispute NYU's need for growth and expansion, but not in our backyard. Look to the financial district or Brooklyn or other areas starved for the very lucrative long-term development prospect. NYU 31 has consistently minimized the size and scope of this plan by showing bird's-eye views of what our footprint will look like, not the real view from ground level. I was appalled and insulted by NYU's feeble attempts during community board meetings that I attended quite regularly to sugarcoat the impact that this monstrous demolition construction project will have on the community. They treat it like idiots. This somehow creates a bizarre formula which states that placing 2.5 million square feet of additional footage will somehow increase the amount of green space. Beyond comprehension. How can our lives be better? How can we work and teach surrounded by construction nightmares? I love living in NYU and Silver Towers for the quality of life and the sense of community associated with teaching in the university. Once the shovels start, this will be the beginning of the end of what has been and what should always be. Thank you.
We also have seen a lot of opposition to the NYU plan from small businesses, and I'm going to ask a local small businessman, Wayne Conti, to come up and say a few brief words. Wayne, please join us.
Hello, my name is Wayne Conti. NYU is a huge corporation intending to earn billions of dollars in the biomedical field building these facilities. This administration will not hesitate to crush people and small businesses in the process. John Sexton and company are not educators. This is all about corporate greed. Sexton is shifting millions and millions of dollars of debt for this project onto the shoulders of students and their parents. These students will be carrying huge debts that they will be paying for years just for Sexton's folly. Thank you.
Our next speaker represents the hundreds and hundreds of families that live in Washington Square Village, where NYU wants to insert these enormous buildings and dig 4 stories underground. I'd like to ask Ann Hearn from the Washington Square Village Tenants Association to speak to us.
NYU has created to say that they approve of the university's plan 2031. None of these people actually live on the superblocks between Halloran and Guardia Place and Mercer Street. This area has approximately 2,400 residential units and an estimated population of between 4,500 and 5,800. It is quite stunning and terrifying to us that someone of character will consider or care about the destruction of our neighborhood and our quality of life for the next 20 years. And that's according to NYU's timeline. Many of us will spend the rest of our lives on a construction site. The babies now being born will go off to college having spent their entire childhood in a toxic environment without playgrounds, fresh air, and open space amenities, which the community has developed over the past 50 years since these blocks were last under construction. When Washington Square Village was completed, it was considered something of an eyesore in the village. It was new, raw, and brash. Over the years, it has matured and mellowed, and has come to take its place as an annual part of Greenwich Village. The mid-century Corinthian Tower design is now more highly regarded than it was then, and of course, we have the world-renowned Sidaki Garden. NYU wants to destroy all this. Shame on them. We urge Borough President Stringer to hold a public hearing while he is considering this application so that we can have an opportunity to state our concerns and we beg him to vote no on this outrageous and obscene plan. We also call upon the City Planning Commission to deny NYU's request for rezoning in the affected area. And lastly, we request speedy passage of this application through the CBC and City Council so that the hearings can be completed in a timely manner before the summer. NYU has received welcome messages from the financial district where their development would be entirely appropriate. They should listen to these invitations.
The Historic Districts Council is a citywide advocate for New York's historic neighborhoods. We represent over 500 neighborhood-based groups and 107 historic districts throughout all of New York City. We are proud to stand with the Greenwich Village community leaders, residents, preservationists, and others in opposing NYU's plans to expand into the open space and low-rise areas around Washington Square Village and University Village. And we urge Scott Stringer and our other elected leaders to vote no on this major land grab. This plan would lift long-standing neighborhood zoning protections, open space preservation requirements, and urban renewal deed restrictions in order to allow the university to build the equivalent of another Empire State Building on open space. Well, it may be argued that towers in the park are not, that model is not the context of Greenwich Village. Removing the park for more towers does not make the situation more in keeping with the village's character. In fact, this kind of development is the character defining in all the wrong ways. If the university must expand to prosper, then it must look to areas where there is room to expand. This plan will not build up this section of the city, it will destroy it.
Yeah, that's right.
As many of us know, one of the most egregious things about this plan is that it would destroy precious open space in our neighborhood. And speaking on behalf of some of that open space, I'm going to ask Ellen Hearn from the Guardia Corner Gardens to say a few words.
NYU claims that they will make Washington Square superblocks more accessible to the public at the same time they increase the NYU population by the thousands. They claim that city officials should love this plan and support it because the watercolors on their proposals make the project green. In fact, this plan is a neutron bomb. By NYU's own studies, it will place entire streets in perpetual shadow. It will create a 1 million square foot excavation pit adjacent to apartment buildings, add 20 years of construction dust and debris. It will destroy 6 acres of vegetation on currently zoned open space. It will fell every tree, of which there are currently hundreds. It will demolish the oldest running community garden in New York City and the only Native American landscape in Manhattan. And it will eradicate several community-maintained playgrounds. This is an ecological time bomb. Should city officials allow NYU to privatize city-owned land? Should NYU be the stewards of our open spaces? The shared open spaces NYU currently stewards have broken fences, dirty walls, poor lighting, collapsed concrete, and derelict play spaces. The community tennis program on top of Cole's rooftop was closed for 7 years. NYU says that their plan will magically increase the open space footage after they build skyscrapers on it. NYU has broken calculators. They have given Greenwich Village broken fences, broken promises, and broken contracts. Right. Mr. Stringer, let's not add broken government to the list. Do not allow New York City's zoning precedents to be removed. Vote no and do not give away our public assets. Ask NYU to go back to the drawing board and create a new plan, one that will consider a non-residentially zoned area for their high-volume expansion and the high-tech infrastructure that their students need.
Just to reiterate, we are all here to say to Borough President Stringer, vote no. Our next speaker represents our neighbors to the north who know how bad a plan like this would be, not just for the local community, but for all of Lower Manhattan. I'm going to ask Corey Johnson, representing the Chelsea Council of Block Associations, to come up and speak.
Thank you, Andrew. My name is Corey Johnson. I'm the chair of Manhattan Community Board 4, which covers Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, but today I'm speaking on behalf of the Council of Chelsea Block Associations, which represents 11 block associations covering 21 blocks in Chelsea. We stand here today with our neighbors in Greenwich Village to the south to say no to this plan, to say no to Borough President Stringer. Communities need open space. Communities need integrated areas and neighborhoods. Communities need respect from the institutions that are amongst them. This NYU plan is diametrically opposed to all of that. Community Board 4 in the next 5 years is going to undertake 28 million square feet of new construction Hudson Yards. NYU can come to us. We'll take their plan. NYU can go out to Poly Prep in Brooklyn. NYU can go to the financial district. NYU can go to Governor's Island. NYU should respect the community that it lives in. What I thought we learned in school is you live by the rules that were set for you. NYU is trying to go back and break the rules that they agreed to many years ago. It's an affront to the community, it's disrespectful to their faculty and to their students and to the neighbors that live around NYU. This community is standing up and saying no. Do you want to know what an overwhelming plan needs? Overwhelming opposition. And that's what we see today. Vote no, hold a public hearing, vote no, Scott.
Yes.
And now, tag teaming with Scott, we have Leslie Doyle, who's the chair of Save Chelsea, but who also happens to be an NYU alumna, who's speaking in opposition to the plan.
Thank you, Andrew. My name is Leslie Doyle, and I'm co-president of Save Chelsea and an NYU alumna. Today, Save Chelsea joins Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation and all of you here in urging Manhattan Borough President Stringer to hold a public hearing and vote no to NYU's outrageous expansion proposal, which would set dangerous precedents and surely rip the heart out of a historic and irreplaceable neighborhood. Chelsea faces similar dangers and, like the village, knows that neighborhood zoning protections are vital to the preservation of our open space and to our community's character and must not be stripped for convenience of developers or large institutions. Manhattan Borough President Stringer, have a hearing, hear us all, and say no. Vote.
Our next speaker represents folks in Union Square who are also very concerned about the NYU expansion and have seen the effect on their area. Edith Charlton, who's the chair of the Union Square Community Coalition.
NYU is so close to taking over the village that it keeps fighting. Promise after promise has been broken, and yet another expansion is planned, breaking a deal made with the public, thus taking a silk purse and turning it into a sow's ear. It has reached the point where NYU teachers and students are saying stop. NYU's presence is not being disputed, but its insistence on taking over the village is. Although they could locate elsewhere, like the financial district, where they would be welcome, they choose not to. I am here because of my interest in preserving the character of a neighborhood. Borough President Stringer, hold a public hearing, vote no to NYU's expansion plans. Their massive zoning changes alone should deny approval of a plan that does not respect the community in which it resides.
One last speaker who represents people in Little Italy, Georgette Fleischer, who's the chair and founder of Friends of Petrocino Square.
Thank you. So Petrocino Square and the residents and the small local independent businesses, which is part of our association, lie just to the south of Houston Street, of the furthest south of these proposed superblocks. So we're just to the south and just a little bit to the east of these superblocks. And we in our neighborhood have experienced already a fair amount of displacement because of NYU's expansion. People may be aware of that huge building that houses students and faculty called the Annex at 400 Broome Street. It was a huge influx into our neighborhood. A couple of years ago, the M1 bus that used to come up Cleveland Place that would pick up the elderly in our neighborhood, people who were Americans with disabilities in our neighborhood, and take them where they needed to go, was eliminated in order to place instead an NYU bus stop right in front of my building, actually on Cleveland Place. So we've experienced a fair amount of displacement already, and I and my neighbors rely on that first superblock as one of the last slices of serenity left for us in Lower Manhattan. I'm a runner, I run through that area, I meet my neighbors, we sit outside and talk in that area. When I go to the grocery store, I enjoy the community garden every single time I go there. I enjoy the beautiful flowers that these people are growing. There's a nest there for these mourning doves that huddle under the shade that's created by the foliage that these people have created for us. It just seems absolutely impossible to me to give up this slice of serenity that's left to us in Lower Manhattan. And so I asked Borough President Scott Stringer to please say no to this plan and to please have a public hearing so that we could air our objections fully before he makes a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. While he's still in earshot, I'm going to ask you to join me in chanting, hold a hearing, vote no. Hold a hearing!